All right, Ray. So check this out. We've got production that's down. We've got shipments that are down. We've got demand that's down. But Car
Yeah.
Edge says that prices are going up. Car Questions Answers says that prices going down. From what I'm hearing in the comments, we have a big feud going on between the two of us because for whatever reason we can't disagree on something.
Huge
And
feud.
apparently we're at each other's throats about this. But
Eh,
make sense of it all. Make sense of it all.
well,
The sales are going to fall off a cliff. Let's go.
well, sales are they going to? Is it a big cliff, a little cliff, or are sales just going to fall off of a guy named Cliff? Uh, I'm not sure. I mean, here's what we know. We know that imported cars from Japan primarily, we know that the shipment of those is way down, 70% off of what it had been. We know that inventory levels are declining, and we know that incentives from manufacturers are declining. That to me would typically indicate that they're not necessarily anticipating sales to continue the rest of this year like they have through the first 5 months. Um, and we're seeing some manufacturers raising prices: Subaru, Hyundai, Ford, to name three off the top of my head. Um, so it's becoming increasingly less affordable for more and more people, and ultimately, in my opinion, and I believe in yours, you correct me if I'm wrong, that we both think that there's going to be some type of slowdown in sales the second half of the year, primarily on the new car side of things.
Yeah, and I really think so. Where I differ, I think, with a lot of at least other creators on there, and I know I've watched some of you guys' predictions of where the market's going to go. I feel like the price increases are they're coming and they're already here with
Yeah,
vehicles that are hitting the ground right now. But I just feel like the demand's going to be so weak. It's even if the manufacturers are going to raise their prices, you're going to have incentives come in from these manufacturers, and then you're going to have dealers that lower prices down to almost what they're paying for them just to actually move some metal and hit some of their numbers. And I feel like when we're looking at this 3, 4, 5 months from now, the average transaction price, in my opinion, I
yeah,
could be. I mean, I'm throwing a dart at the wall right here, but I feel like the demand is so weak, and it's going to continue to get weak throughout summer. You're going to have dealerships that they can't go 3, 4 months with 60, 50% sales of what they have been doing over the last couple months. They're not going to want to do that. So you're going to have transaction prices that I feel like have to go down to match what the economy is saying needs to happen with a lot of these vehicle transactions. Even if we have fewer supplies, fewer shipments coming in, like we're showing right here, there's going to be fewer vehicles that are coming into the market over the
yeah,
summer. That's a given.
yes.
Companies are holding on to see what's going to actually happen with tariffs. Whatever happens with that, they're waiting, so hopefully they can get vehicles into the country for a cheaper price later on. But even so, we have so many vehicles sitting on the ground right now that a lot of these car dealers are having a hard time moving as it is. And if you add in some price bumps, if you add in inflation everywhere else, no, the market is going to tell you no, you can't increase these prices.
I would typically agree with that. I and the only reason I might have a slight difficulty in agreeing with that is I am not sure in today's world that the manufacturers give a crap about 87% of the potential buyers out there. And what do I mean by that? A year and a half ago, when there was a study done, they found that 17% of the people felt that cars and car payments were too expensive and that they could not, in good conscience, see themselves buying a new car. So if 83% of the people said they couldn't. That left 17% who said they can. And I think that number who says they can has shrunken even more than that. I think it's somewhere around 13 to 15% of the population. And I am not convinced that the manufacturers are not just saying to themselves at this point, we're just going to cater to that 13 to 15% and the hell with the rest. It just, we can get by selling enough cars just to the 13 to 15%. So, yes, I would normally say in bad economic times, and if vehicles are sitting on lots, that dealers and manufacturers are going to have to get creative either with discounts or incentives. But I know that manufacturers are saying to themselves at this point, we can either underwrite the cost of the vehicle's price increase through tariffs by not passing that on to the customers, or we can increase our incentives, but we can't do both. And I think what we're going to find is that most of the manufacturers are trying to eat as much of those tariff costs as they can, which is going to limit the amount of incentive spend that they do. So what you would normally think would happen, I don't know that it will, because these are some of the most unnormal times in automotive that I've ever lived in, because everything seems to be counterintuitive. It's the reverse of what you would think should be happening. So I don't know.
So here's my pushback against that. I would assume that this 13 to 15% of people that you're talking about, these are the people that have the money. Mm-hmm. I feel like those people, that 15% is more likely to be well informed as far as political things going on than the other 85%, because it matters more to them because they have the money, right?
Yes.
So I would assume with those people being more informed, they know about the tariff situation. They know that the potential of the price increases are coming, are here, whatever. Don't you feel like a majority of those that were thinking about buying, they bought just in the last 2 to 3 months?
I think
now that's where this cliff
did.
comes up.
Yeah. I think the smart ones did. Absolutely. I think the smart ones could see the writing on the wall. Okay, that there's no way that these manufacturers can just eat all of the tariff increases. So you will have to see some type of price increases throughout the year, or they will lower the marketing dollars to help move these vehicles. I mean, we've already seen some really strong leases that had been out there disappear, because there's only so many dollars each one of these manufacturers has, and they have to spend it as wisely as they possibly can. And we haven't even mentioned the possibility of rare earth elements and magnets that are needed for the production of both internal combustion engine vehicles and EVs, where there is a dramatic shortage of those materials because, well, I don't know, China controls 90 to 95% of that market. So if they're not selling them, if they haven't licensed the suppliers that want to buy them, then the requisite parts that they need for cars won't get built, which means the cars can't get. Ford idled a plant for a week or two already because of the rare earth magnets that they couldn't get their hands on. So where's it all go? I mean, none of it makes any sense at the moment, at least to me.
So what are the brands that you feel like have this actual pricing power? Because I can tell you that I was, for a video, I think 2.5 weeks ago, I was on a Ford dealership, and they had a brand new Ford, I think it was an F-250, a 2022. still sitting on their lot. They had 2023s, and then
Yeah.
they had more 2024s than they had anything else. So whatever, tariffs can come raise whatever prices they want for that dealership. That dealership's just sitting on all this aged inventory that's not going to even be, I mean, tariffs weren't even thought about whenever they had some of these vehicles that came out on their lot. So in that case, even if they're getting these new 2025s at that Ford dealership,
Yes.
if you put on any kind of tariff, now it's not on the F-150s, but say Mavericks, right? Mavericks are going to have that tariff that's put into place. They still have 2024s that don't. Those Mavericks, if they want to sell the 2025s, they're going to have to make them compete with the 2024s. So I feel like we're just living in a world with a lot of these brands, your Ford, your GM, your Stellantis, your Volkswagen,
believe
your
it or
Nissan.
not, I got somebody knocking at my door.
Okay.
Give me a moment.
All right, so we're taking a hiatus from this. So let's talk about used car sales. Let's get Ray off this screen because he doesn't know how to run a show here. There we go. So for used cars, at least, I'm a used car dealer. I have been one for 14 years. Now I sell cars that are $5,000 and under, but when I go to these auctions, I'm looking at every price point on the market. And for used cars, what I feel like is going to happen and what we've already seen is we had all this pull forward in demand from these new car manufacturers that got in a lot of trade-ins. So we've been seeing a lot more trade-ins coming into the auctions. And what happens is that we have fewer dealers that are actually wanting to buy because there's a weakness. This is one of the weaker times to be a used car dealer. I've experienced it. Even cars that are $2,000, $2,500 are sitting longer at my lot. It's been a lot slower at my lot, even for that price range of cars. Very, very weird for us to have inventory that's $2,000, $2,500, and it be sitting and not selling it. So you're having a lot of other dealers that are in the same situation, but you're pumping all this fresh supply into the market from trade-ins, from people going and getting ahead of tariffs, pull forward in demand from the new car manufacturers, buying cars, trading in their cars, more inventory at the dealer auctions. So it's actually lowering the price. And talked about this quite a bit. And this is one of my, I'll go ahead and I was going to disagree with Car Edge, but Ray's back. So let people love it. So here's my thing about used cars that we're having this pull forward demand from the manufacturers. That's pushing more cars to the auction. I've seen it in the data, and you're seeing from Black Book data and from MMRs that prices have gone down quite a bit in the last 3-4 weeks,
3 to 3 weeks.
Level.
I just prior to the show, I received an email from Black Book, and the depreciation last week was double what it historically is for that week. And so we saw the week before more seasonalized, historic, normal depreciation, and we're seeing it accelerate. So, yeah, the poor dealers that 8-10 weeks ago were bidding up cars way over value. If they haven't sold those cars, they're going to be sitting on those cars for quite some time because they own them all for too much money. And thankfully, what you're seeing is that used car values, at least on the wholesale level, probably not yet on the retail level, but on the wholesale level, we see them retreating, which is what should be happening this time of year.
Yeah, and I mean this is normal for summer. Like we hit tax time and we have this mini crash that happens. People get so mad at me for saying crash, but it absolutely happens. And I see it where prices will go down at auction 10, 20%, and it'll happen in a week. That happens in the stock market, that's a crash. So I mean, it absolutely happens on the wholesale level. You're not going to see it, but I'm seeing it. Used car dealers are not going to lower their prices 20%. I do because I want to stay ahead of the market, but you're not going to just go out there and see retail prices drop by 20% over the week. So what we do is we try to stay ahead of the market. We've even changed how we price our cars because we've experienced something differently this year where prices have gone down faster than what we've experienced after tax time, and there hasn't been demand from dealers. So what it tells me is that a lot of these dealers, they bought cars 2-3 months ago, they didn't sell them at tax time when they should have been moving them in lower prices, and now they can't buy because they're still sitting on inventory they bought 2 months ago.
Yes.
Guess what? That inventory they bought 2 months ago, it's dramatically lower right now at the auctions than what they paid for it then. And so that's what we're doing, and we're moving our prices. Traditionally, I would wait like 2 weeks after we've initially priced our cars to start lowering prices. We're waiting a week now. If that car don't move in a week, then we're dropping at $500 instantly.
Well, it's not as if there isn't going to continue to be an influx, at least from sales. And I don't know, I haven't checked with any new car dealers this month to see what the new car business is like this month. I don't know if it's as good as last month, if it's better, if it's worse. But I think dealers are still trying to dispose of a lot of the trades that they took in at the latter part of May, which is good for you. It means you will see dramatic decline in prices of those vehicles. So your customers should be able to see the dramatic decline in prices. How long that will last, if car sales suddenly come to somewhat of a screeching halt in July and August, because of prices, then who the hell knows what'll happen. But at this point, yeah, it was good to see the return of seasonality as far as depreciation, where we hadn't seen it for a number of weeks. So that's good news for everybody, I think.
Yeah, and we got 2 comments I want to pull up real quick. Dave saying, I find car auctions as a real tell on how the economy is going. And this is interesting to me because this is you guys' side right here. Dan is saying that Justice, who is on your team, said this morning that June is starting off real slow. And I talked to Tommy from Deliver too, and he has a car buying service. You guys have a car buying service. And I think it's going to be very interesting to hear what you guys are seeing as far as your volumes from people trying to get you to negotiate for a car for them. Because if you see that volume go down, it could be that there's the weakness in the market, but it could also be that people are going in and finding deals that they actually want to find without having to poke dealerships. Because I think a lot of your customers and a lot of Tommy's customers too are consumers that have gone into dealerships and they bang their head against the wall and they can't get better deals. And then they come to you guys and say, okay, look, I'm trying to get 10% off this car. I can't do it. You guys do it for me.
That very well could be the case. I think what we're going to see is that there's fewer people in the marketplace. One of the things that happened in March and April is the seasonably adjusted sales rate for new cars spiked, and they were selling at the rate in May it was 17 point, or in April it was 17.3 million new cars. If we continue to that pace, would be sold during this year. The very next month, even though we saw a slight uptick in retail sales, the seasonally adjusted sales rate dropped from 17.3 million to 15.6. That's a huge decline from one month to the next. It will be interesting to see what that number turns out to be in June. I think there's a lot of fear and a lot of concern for everybody at the moment. And you and I have discussed this in the past. When there is a fear and concern, people tend to become more conservative with how they spend their money. And so that larger purchases, and cars represent that, and many other large purchases, appliances and things of that nature, get put off until people feel safer, so to speak. And so I think that could be part of what we're seeing.
And I can tell you, I know that we're in a downtrending market right now because I can see this when it first starts, because you start seeing no sales and if bids start to skyrocket at auction. And what I mean, no sell is basically when a car goes through the block, goes through the auction, and a seller wants this amount for it, but the bidders only bring it up to this amount. Say the seller wants $10,000 for it, but the bidders only run it up to $9,000. Then they'll just no sell it on the block right there. Or you could have a similar situation. Bring it, they want 10,000, it brings 9,000, and they put it on an if bid on a phone call, meaning they try to negotiate after the auction. Seller says, okay, I'll take $9,500. Maybe the buyer says, yeah, I'll take it for that. But we start to see many, many more of those happen at auction. And when times are good, when the market's moving up, everything gets sold, because as the market's moving up, buyers are going up with the market. There's a lot of demand, a lot of velocity of money moving through the system. Car dealers like myself are moving cars. They want to replace the inventory. That's when you can see all the sales happen. But on the inverse side, when car dealers like myself are slow, they are not moving inventory. If they don't have spots on their lot, or they don't have available credit on their credit lines because they're just not moving vehicles, then fewer of the dealers show up. When you have fewer dealers show up at these auctions, there's less competition for the cars. So the bids don't go as high as what these franchise dealers want. So if these franchise dealers traded for these cars 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, then you have the situation where, okay, they're not selling for what they want. So they have to readjust. And this is why you see this downtrend in the market.
This is when used car departments take haircuts. Okay.
Yes.
It's you can't base the current market value of your inventory based on what you paid for it 6 or 8 weeks ago, because the market changes weekly. And so just because a dealer paid too much for a car 6 or 8 weeks ago doesn't mean that when they eventually sell it, they're guaranteed to sell it at a profit. If the market has changed dramatically, and in many cases it has, they're gonna be forced to lose money on it, if either to a retail customer or if they take it back to the auction. It's just a fact of life, because the value of that commodity can change rapidly, and oftentimes does. You see it. I've worked with dealers that were $350,000, $400,000 upside down in their used car inventories because a used car manager got a little too far out over his skis. Thought the market was going to go in one direction and it went in another. It happens, because anytime you buy a car, anytime any dealership buys a car or trades a car, it is a crapshoot. There is no guarantee that just because you bought it, A, you can sell it, or B, you can actually sell it for a profit. There's no guarantee. There's the hope, there's the expectation, but it isn't guaranteed. You miss on some of the vehicles you buy.
Right. Yeah. So I have a question for you. So we had these 2 months of extreme high sales for a lot of these dealerships because of the pull forward in demand, people trying to get ahead of stuff. Do you feel like when these dealerships, these sales managers see these deals rolling in, are they just wanting to keep on stack on top of deals? Does it make them more willing to actually pay more for a trade to get a deal done, just because there's so many deals rolling in and they're just trying to make the biggest paycheck that they can for that month? Or does it cause them to tighten up because they're like, you know what, we've already made it, we've done really well this month, so let's tighten up on the trades that we're actually bringing in?
Smart used car manager, smart sales manager recognizes that there's no better time to strike a deal than when somebody's actually expressing a desire to make it so. So you do whatever you should or whatever you can. And if that means that you stretch a little more for the trade-in, you do it. It's still going to represent a much better value buying it at the dealership from a customer via trade than if you went to buy it at the auction. So even though you might be paying as a used car manager a little more than you would like to at the dealership for that car, it is still $1,000, $1,500 below what you would be paying for that same car with all the fees and expenses if you were to buy it at the sale. So smart ones, they got a live customer in front of them, and that customer is threatening to go home in a different car. You figure out how to make it happen. And if you can't, you're in the wrong job.
So here's the problem for a lot of these sales managers and the used car managers in this downtrending market is that a lot of all this pull forward in demand that happened from people getting ahead of tariffs, it all happened during tax time. It happened during the highest time when the wholesale values were going to be. So they were giving tax time wholesale values. And then we know what just happened to Black Book and MMRs, and they just took a poop, right? So and it takes time for vehicles to move from dealerships as trade-ins to the auction. Not a lot of time, but it's going to take a week, 2 weeks. Sometimes sometimes if these dealerships are really slow about it, it can be a month before some of these cars go from trade-in status to auction, depending on what kind of titles they got to wait on or whatever. But they could be stuck in a lot of these trade-ins right now because of the weakness, at least that I'm seeing at the auctions from a lot of the dealers, just like myself.
No, it happens all the time. I have worked with, and I just had this conversation with my friend Chip the other day. I have worked with used car managers who, when you would ask them to go appraise the vehicle, their first response was, well, what does the customer want for it? And my response always was, doesn't matter what the customer wants for it. What's its value? Go look at the car, appraise the car, tell me what that car's worth, not what you hope to get it for, not what the customer might settle for, but what is the real honest to goodness value of the vehicle? And a lot of the used car managers I worked with, it was as simple as this. If they couldn't steal it, they weren't going to trade it because they wanted to be able to make all the money at the auction. And it was like, at the end of the month, if your dealership's making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in wholesale profit, how many retail deals did you pass on so that you could be buying all your trades below market value? And that's the wrong attitude for a used car manager today, to always just want to figure out how to make the most wholesale profit instead of trying to figure out how to make the most deals possible.
Well, that wholesale manager, his check is dictated on how much he's making on the wholesale level there, right?
Well, okay. So if you were a dealer principal at a new car franchise and you have a used car manager, do you strictly want to tie the used car manager's pay to gross profit on the used car department plus wholesale profit? Or do you want to tie it to what the entire sales department does? Sales being new and used. Because if you're just going to tie it to wholesale profit and used car profit, he's going to screw the new car department. Okay? He's going to screw the new car manager. And ultimately, he's screwing the dealer principal because he is costing the dealership deals. I've seen it. I've lived with sales managers, with used car managers like that, that were so proud of themselves because they were making $60,000, $70,000 wholesale profit for the month, and yet that maybe they cost the new car department $100,000.
Right. So talking about attitude, we got a question that's actually good here. I think Darren's asking, why are these dealerships more willing to send cars to the auction rather than sell them at a discount to a customer? I can speak for the used car side, and then Ray will talk franchise side why they send cars to auction. On the used car side, a lot of these car dealers, they're living basically paycheck to paycheck, and it's not necessarily how you're thinking, but they can't really buy another car until they sell a car. They can't pay off their debt till they sell some cars. And a lot of them are cash strapped. They don't have the money. That's why they're borrowing money to actually floor their cars, to use these credit lines to actually buy their cars. So a lot of times when they have to make curtailment payments, when they have to make interest payments, they need cash and they need it right now. And the easiest way for them to do that is take a car to the auction, because they get paid for that car that day. And yeah, they could lower the car quite a bit, but you still have to wait for a customer to come buy that car. But if they need cash that day, it's easy. Take it to the auction. I leave. If I take a car to auction on a Tuesday, I leave Tuesday with a check in my hand for selling that car. Now, on the new car side, it's a little bit different than that.
Not really. I mean, why would a dealership do it? Because even if it's in a new car franchise dealership, you still want to, you can turn that overaged, overpriced inventory into cash quicker at the auction than you can waiting for a customer to finally come in. You don't know at what advertised price a customer will finally respond and come in and buy the car. Now, you can keep lowering the price, hoping and praying that somebody comes in to buy the car. Or you can just take the damn things to the sale, get whatever you can for it, turn around and take that cash you just got and spend it on other vehicles that you think you'll be able to sell more quickly and mitigate the losses you just took. Ultimately, that's why dealerships do it, whether it be a used car dealer or a new car dealer. If your pockets are deep enough as a new car franchise dealer, then by all means, try and keep the car there as long as you can. Wait and try and find a customer at a deeply discounted price, with the hope that your finance department will have a decent back end on the deal with finance reserves and sell some product to help mitigate the front end loss. Plus, you've created a potential customer for your parts and service departments. That would be the preferable way to do it. But dealerships are cash intensive, extremely cash intensive, even big ones. And so sometimes it just makes more sense to bite the bullet, take the losses, take them to the auction, turn them into cash that day, and you don't have to wait any longer to do that. So it's the same rationale.
And I can tell you, for cars that I take to auction, is because they're not good enough to sell to my customers. So at the auction, they're literally just, I'm washing my hands of it. Whatever loss I'm going to take is because I don't want to fix the car. And a lot of other dealers, I think probably even franchise dealers too, if you've got almost a 20-year-old car with 200,000 miles, is something that I'm going to buy from my car dealership, they don't want that on their lot. So they're like, no, what? Just send it to auction. I don't want it. So that's what happens with a lot of these cars too. And even with my range of cars, there's stuff that even I don't want to sell to customers if it's got a bad motor, bad transmission or whatever, and it doesn't make sense for me to fix it. I'll just dump it at auction. That's what happens with a lot of my cars. But we have killed 33 minutes. Ray, you want to take us out?
Well, I want to thank you for putting up with my heating and air conditioning guy who showed up during the middle of the show. Naturally, believe it or not, this adventure with my heating and air conditioning that started in October when the heat stopped working, and we put in a new system in January and February to find out that, well, I don't know, the air conditioning didn't blow cold. I'm hopeful that since he left that he actually corrected that. So it's nice and chilly in here, but it was a great warm conversation that I had with you today, and I appreciate you putting up with me having to run and answer the door.
No problem. It's, you know what? I just took over, and it's like I do this for a living or something. It just works.
I think you're pretty good at it. Just
Yeah,
between you and me. Yeah. Yeah. And
it takes someone with a lot of hot air to be able to talk for as long as I talk about nothing.
Well, we both do a pretty good job of that.
All right, Ray, it's good talking to you today, buddy.
Same here, Brandon. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, that was fun. Oh, my